behalf of HKUST, I would like to welcome you all to this COP26 webinar. This event is co-hosted by Business Environment Council, Civic Exchange, and HKUST, with the support by the British Consul General to Hong Kong and Macau. This is a timely discussion as COP26 will be held in Glasgow in early November this year. Climate change is a burning question of the day. How to keep the increase in global temperature within 1.5 degrees and prevent extreme weather events. Like this recent extreme heat wave in Western US, with extreme temperature went up to as high as 180 degrees Fahrenheit, about 55 degrees. Some areas even have temperature up to 25 degrees above normal, affect more than 40 million people. Different nations have pledged to go carbon neutral. In the recent G7 summit, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised that it will be the first G7 at which every member has committed to hit net zero by 2050. Hong Kong too has a role to play. The Hong Kong government has already pledged to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and we are awaiting a new climate plan to be published in the summer. HKUSD is committed to sustainability too. We launched a new renewable energy project last year that includes the installation of up to 8,000 solar panels at over 50 locations on campus. It will be Hong Kong's largest solar energy generation project when completed. The system will generate up to 3 million kilowatt-hours of electricity every year and reduce 1.5 billion kilograms of carbon emission per annum over a 25-year period. With the help of the Christine, Institute of Environment and Division of Environment and Sustainability have also been actively participating in research and policy engagement work on climate change issues, including the long-term partnership with multi-stakeholders and good friends like BEC and Civic Exchange to facilitate effective discussion like today. In 2018, we organized the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Conference with more than 800 participants. Almost every year, we follow carefully and brought the important discussion from COP to our Hong Kong community attention. Today, with the support by the British Consul General to Hong Kong and Macau, we have the privilege of having invited Mr. Kent O'Flaherty, the UK government COP26 regional ambassador to Asian Pacific, to share the COP26 key agenda with us. I'm sure we will also benefit from the two-section talk today, covering the global and Hong Kong relevancy, respectively, and could take the discussion forward for achieving our carbon neutral goals, both individually and jointly. Once again, thank you for joining this webinar. Without further ado, I would like to pass the stage to Simon for starting the section 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Simon Ng from Business Environment Council, and I will be the moderator of Session 1, COP26 and its global relevance. To kickstart this session, we are pleased to have Mr. Ken O'Flaherty, the Hong Kong government, the UK government's COP26 regional ambassador to Asia Pacific, to walk us through the road to COP26. While Ken cannot be with us today, he's kind enough to record a video with key messages to our audience. So let's watch the video now.
Hello, I'd like to start by thanking the Business Environment Council, Civic Exchange, and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology for organising this event and inviting me to speak today. It's great to see such engagement between academics and industry experts on such an important issue. The theme of my talk today is the road to COP26. How did we get here? Where are we now? And what do we need to achieve in the run-up to November and beyond? So, how did we get here? The science has unfortunately never been clearer. Climate change is the greatest threat facing our planet today. We are seeing intensifying storms, floods, and wildfires. Air pollution sadly affects the health of tens of millions of people, and unpredictable weather is causing untold damage to homes and livelihoods. Asia is the region that arguably stands to lose most economically from climate change. Analysis by McKinsey suggests that the Asian GDP at risk from heat and humidity increases up to 2050 constitutes over 2/3 of the total global potential losses. These impacts are already starting to be seen today. 1/3 of Bangladesh was underwater last year, and extreme weather events are becoming more and more frequent across the region. And that's why it's more important than ever for the world to come together to fight against these effects. If we don't act now, the effects of rising temperatures will become more frequent and more brutal. We will witness a scale of global catastrophe, the likes of which the world has not seen. A historic breakthrough was made in 2015 when agreement was reached by all countries to contain global temperature increase to 2 degrees and aim for 1.5 degrees. The goal for the COP26 summit is now to put the Paris Accords into practice at Glasgow. This meeting has unfortunately already been delayed by 1 year due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and our COP President-designate, Alok Sharma, is clear that the urgency of the climate emergency means it must go ahead in November this year. As the COP President-designate has said, COP26 is our last best chance. We look forward to welcoming delegates to Glasgow in 5 months' time. So where are we now? Well, over the past year, COVID-19 has of course devastated and disrupted the world. But alas, climate change has also continued and ultimately threatens life on Earth. On climate change, we know that in the UK we want to lead by example, to practice what we preach. The UK has been clear that we need to build back greener, and our 10-point plan will help deliver a green industrial revolution. From zero-emission transport to investing in new energy and renewables to making our homes, our schools and our hospitals greener, warmer and more efficient in energy. This sets the right trajectory for our people and for our businesses. A green and resilient recovery from COVID-19 will create employment in the industries of the future. It will restore nature, and at the same time it will unleash economic growth. We're actually speeding up because we see the obligations for developed countries to do more. Following the recommendation from the UK's Independent Climate Change Committee, we have recently set the world's most ambitious climate change target to reduce emissions by 78% by 2035 compared to 1990 levels. That will put us on the right path to achieve our goals. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. The low carbon economy is now growing faster than the old economy. We have stopped all new support for fossil fuels overseas, making new funding available for green and clean alternatives. By 2030, we'll be generating enough offshore wind to power every single home in the UK, and we'll also have ended the sale of new petrol and diesel cars. And we've been pleased to see our friends across Asia also start to take much stronger climate action. Following the net zero announcements by China, Japan and South Korea last autumn, it's been great to see further such announcements by countries such as Laos, Nepal and the Maldives. We're also seeing the energy transition accelerating across Asia as countries move away from coal and towards renewables. And we hope that many more Asian partners will join the Philippines and Pakistan in announcing an end to new coal plants. Here in Hong Kong, it's also great to see commitment from the Chief Executive to a net zero goal by 2050. Both the UK and Hong Kong will make climate-related disclosures mandatory across the economy by 2025. It's also exciting to see the Hong Kong government has announced the roadmap on popularisation of electric vehicles, confirming that it will end new registration of fossil fuel private cars by 2035. We have made a similar plan on private vehicles, but we're also looking now at setting a clear date to end sales of new diesel commercial buses. These actions are of course very welcome, but there's much more still to be done. To reference a specific example, buildings in Hong Kong account for more than 90% of electricity consumption and 60% of greenhouse gas emissions. Many of you present are aware how urgently this needs to be addressed. We're looking forward to seeing the new Climate Action Plan that the Environment Secretary plans to launch later this year. Working together, we can develop zero-emission solutions faster, increase economies of scale, and bring down the costs of a green transition. We're now less than 5 months away from COP26. The UK, along with our partners Italy, will bring 197 parties together for 12 days of talks. It must be the moment that every country and every part of society embraces their responsibility to protect our planet. David Attenborough, the People's Advocate for COP26, said that the epidemic has shown us how crucial it is to find agreement among nations if we're to solve such worldwide problems. But the problems that await us within the next 5 to 10 years are even greater. It's crucial that these meetings in Glasgow have success and that at last the nations come together to solve the crippling problems that the world now faces. So what do we need to achieve? Well, it's clear there's much more work to do in the run-up to COP26 and beyond. Our presidency falls during the first significant test of the Paris Agreement, where countries are expected to reassess their national commitments against the overall temperature goal of Paris. And it will also be a moment of reckoning on progress on the other pillars of the Paris Agreement, adaptation and finance. The UK will need to deliver a balanced outcome in raising ambition. In partnership with Italy, we've set out 4 clear goals for our presidency. The first is to secure global net zero and keep the 1.5 degrees target within reach. The commitments made up until April, including at the Leaders' Summit on Climate, improved the Climate Action Tracker's warming estimate by 0.2 degrees. While all these developments are welcome, warming based on the targets and pledges, even under the most optimistic assumptions, is still well above the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature limit. As part of the Paris Agreement, every country agreed to communicate or update their emissions reduction targets every 5 years to reflect their highest possible ambition and a progression over time. So we need to make more progress in terms of ambitious 2030 national commitments, and these targets must translate into action fast. The second is to adapt to protect communities and natural habitats. Even if we stopped emissions rising today, the world would still need to deal with significant climate disruption. Adapting to climate impacts is crucial as we see these worsen. We want all countries to come forward with ambitious plans. COVID-19 has dramatically illustrated the need for countries to prepare for and build resilience to future shocks, including the effects of climate change. Through our response to COVID, we now have an opportunity to build that global resilience and ensure we're prepared for the next climate disaster. Just last month, the UK Environment Secretary announced that we'll be amending the Environment Bill to require an additional legally binding target for species for 2030, aiming to halt the decline of nature. We hope that this will be the net zero equivalent for nature, spurring action of the scale required to address the biodiversity crisis. And the third is to mobilise funding. Developing countries in particular need support. Developed countries must deliver on their promise to raise at least $100 billion every year in climate finance to support developing countries. The UK is doubling our international climate finance commitment to at least £11.6 billion between 2021 and 2025, and we are ensuring that our assistance is broadly equally balanced between support for mitigation and for adaptation. We want as many countries as possible to follow our lead and increase their commitment through to 2025. And the fourth goal is to work together to deliver. As incoming presidency, we are positioning ourselves as an honest broker committed to representing the interests of all parties and navigating the process towards a balanced outcome, ensuring we're leaving no issue behind. Doing so will help deliver on our other 3 goals and will show everyone that the world is moving towards a resilient net zero economy. These are really ambitious goals, but we've seen welcome progress in several international meetings with countries coming forward with high-level targets for carbon emissions. The G7 Climate and Environmental Ministerial last month was another major stepping stone, where all G7 members signed up to the global 30 by 30 initiative to conserve or protect at least 30% of the world's land and at least 30% of the world's ocean by 2030, and committed to 30 by 30 nationally. They also committed to phase out new direct government support for international fossil fuels, and the Leaders' Summit last week announced further policy measures and stressed the importance of urgent international action. So, engagement from countries all over the world is ramping up on the road to COP26, and each event will be pivotal. Next month alone sees the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, the G20 Venice conference, G20 climate, energy and environment ministers event, and the UK ministerial meeting, which will bring together 40 plus countries to delve into some of the key negotiations topics that will be addressed at COP26. These summits will all shine a further spotlight on the action of major economies. And we're also seeing renewed engagement across Asia. I accompanied the COP President-designate on his visit to Asia last month, and I heard firsthand how countries like Vietnam are accelerating the deployment of renewable energy and moving away from coal. Given the rapidly falling cost of renewables and storage, this now has the potential to turbocharge their growth over the next decade. We also know that several ASEAN partners are now considering new ambitious net zero targets. And we're seeing the business community taking greater action and joining the Race to Zero initiative. And I hope very much that further businesses here in Hong Kong will follow suit. Delivering on the vision set out in the Paris Agreement will require action by all sectors of society, by governments, by businesses, and by citizens. To help us to achieve the 4 goals, we need real changes on the ground across the globe to make this a reality. All of you online and in this room have a critical part to play by exercising your expertise, influencing change on the ground, and inspiring governments to take actions and increase their ambition. At the beginning of this talk, I mentioned that it was more important than ever for all of us to come together and take action. So let's do just that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ken. I think his presentation actually set the scene very nicely for the conversations that's going to follow. Now, before I start the panel, I would like to ask the audience joining us online, if you have any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A function. Type in your questions or comments, and we will look at those comments and questions, and we will ask those questions to the panelists later on. But I would like to start by introducing our panelists. So thank you very much. I would like to first introduce Mrs. Tamsin Heath, Acting British Consul General to Hong Kong and Macau. Welcome, Tamsin. And we also have Mr. Richard Lancaster, CEO of CLP Holdings Limited. Welcome, Richard. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, joining us from Beijing all the way is Professor Qi Ye. Professor Qi, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Thank you. It's nice to be with you. Great.
Professor Qi is Professor of the Division of Public Policy of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So thank you for joining us all the way. Now, I would like to start my first question with Tamsin. I think Ken's presentation is very clear. UK has a very important role to play. And it seems like you already aligned up a lot of activities. You are very focused. You kind of understand what will be an important outcome, from COP26. So maybe can you tell us say a few words about maybe how important it is to chair COP26, and what would be the role of the UK? And I think most importantly, what would you consider a successful COP26?
Well, thanks very much, and thanks very much for having me here this afternoon. And I think this issue is incredibly important, and Ken has, of course, laid out the overall approach that the UK is taking on climate change. I think if you look back at COPs over the year, this is the 26th Conference of the Parties, and if you look back to when we started, there's not that many of them that we actually remember. And that indicates how important it is to make real progress. There's been COPs that have happened where we haven't made progress, where we haven't reached the agreement, where we haven't achieved the ambitions that everybody has had, and we haven't taken the action that was required to tackle climate change. Paris was a really significant breakthrough where we got the global commitment to net zero, but we're not meeting that target. And so this COP for us is hugely, hugely important for us to reassess the commitments that are made, for us to get that ambition back and to get that agreement. I think the way that we look at it is we have spent a lot of time looking at why did some of the COPs not succeed? What was the reason why we didn't reach agreement? And you can look back at sort of some of the summits over the years. You could look at Copenhagen, for example, which was something that I worked on when I was a climate change attaché in Saudi Arabia. And you look at that a breakdown in trust that happened between countries. And so we've looked back at all of those different summits, and we've tried to assess how can we get countries to come together? How do we build up the momentum? How, in this period where the world is so focused on a global pandemic, do we not lose the ambition? Do we not lose the momentum and keep people focusing on this and keep focusing on the fact that we are all going to have to go through a period of economic recovery? How do we use that as an opportunity to really build back better? So I think we see it as a huge responsibility. I think the UK hopes it can use its global convening power and all of the different meetings that we have over this year to really build that ambition. You asked what we consider success. I mean, I think those 4 goals are the ones that we really hold on to, and those 4 goals are really getting genuine commitments to get towards 1.5 degrees. We need to get the world to do more. So Ken talked a lot about all the different meetings that we have coming up, G20 and elsewhere. A lot of our focus is on the major emitters. It's trying to get those countries to make the commitments required to get us on the pathway to 1.5 degrees. We've got to focus on adaptation. We need to have significant agreements and significant support towards particularly developing countries, but all countries in the world need to adapt to climate change, because climate change, even at 1.5 degrees, will be challenging. Thirdly, we have to actually get that finance on the table. We can't just make lofty commitments to 100 billion and then not deliver on it. We have to actually make it, happen. And I think that's a real demonstration of trust. Actually, developing countries need to see that finance coming on the table. And the final one is collaboration. It's us coming together to find those technological solutions, and a lot of that is also with the business sector and elsewhere. How can we work together to accelerate this and bring things on stream? And I think when we look at the global pandemic, it actually gives me a huge amount of confidence when you see how quickly a vaccine was developed, something that previously would have thought unthinkable, that to develop it that quickly. When you think about how quickly that came on stream, if we turn our minds to something, we as the world can achieve a lot. So I hope that we can achieve similar levels of success that we think unthinkable through technological advancement.
Okay, thank you, Tamsin. If I may follow up on that, because I think in Ken's presentation, he mentioned that the COP president-designate said COP26 is perhaps our last best chance. Does it give the UK government extra pressure, or is it actually becoming a driver for you to do more and to do better?
So, I mean, I think it puts a lot of pressure on us, and I think we want to put pressure on ourselves. I think you need to develop a sense of urgency in order for countries to come together and make that really tough commitment. But I also think it's true. If we don't get on the right pathway now, and if we don't seize the opportunity presented by the sort of economic recovery packages that are coming on stream, we're not going to achieve these climate change goals. So I think it's helpful for us, but it does mean we feel a huge sense of responsibility to be able to deliver.
Thank you. And I think you're right, because the next 10 years are really important. And it's not just the UK's responsibility. Actually, each country, they have to, as you said, revise and revisit their commitment. But at the same time, I think business also have a role to play. And I think I will come back to that later with Richard. But if I may, I would like to invite Professor Chi to join the conversation now. Professor Chi, China, of course, is a very important part of the equation and the conversation. So just a simple question to you, how important COP26 will be for China?
I think the COP26 is as important to China as it is to the world. I agree. This COP26 is very special, not only because it's delayed for a year, but also there are so many things that happened over the last 2 years between the COP25 and COP26. And we just recall a year ago and at this time, and because of the coronavirus pandemic and climate change, so basically retreated as an issue that with very little mentioning in the world, very understandably, particularly when COP26 was postponed for a year. Then hopefully, but later that year, last year, especially, I would say after September 2022, when China made the announcement to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060, I think it's a major boost for the actions and the thinking about climate change. And ever since then, we have seen numerous countries now have made their own announcement towards carbon or climate neutrality. And depending on how we count it, right now, there are somewhere between 40 countries to 120 countries, right, who have made the announcement. I think for China, it is really a major announcement to not only to peak the carbon emissions by 2030. By the way, this is a major revision, right? We remember under the Paris Agreement, it was around 2030. We all know the Chinese way of describing things, but by 2030, and also yesterday, the municipality of Beijing made the announcement. Beijing already achieved the carbon peak in the year 2012. 9 years ago, and a number of other countries are just making their ambition to reach carbon peak before, long before 2030. I think this is this is in a way just to show China is very serious about the issue, and also very serious about about achieving these. Delivering these ambitious targets. I think this is a very important opportunity now, when all of these, most of these countries made the announcement. I would just say, if we can reach a new consensus that we are all targeting on carbon neutrality by mid-century, I think this would be a major achievement for the COP26 in Glasgow. And in the meantime, I would say there are some issues that are not really helping to achieve the goals of the COP26. So for example, we have heard in Europe, right? They have this CBAM, the carbon border adjustment mechanisms. This kind of a conversation, we think this is very important in the long run, but it's a very divisive issue right now. So I would like to see, the COP26 is a major event for building new consensus. I think the most important consensus now is let's agree on carbon neutrality by mid-century.
Well, thank you, Professor Chi. Now, if I may ask a follow-up question, obviously what you mentioned, about consensus building is important. With the Chinese delegation going to COP26, what are you expecting from them to share and to showcase perhaps to the COP community, in November this year? Because I think everyone is keeping an eye on China and how China is doing, given the announcement of a very ambitious target by 2060, and of course, for coal to peak, use of coal to peak by 2030. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's quite understandable that all eyes are watching how and what China will do, because there is no question China is the #1 carbon emitter in the world, just accounting for close to 30% of the carbon emissions worldwide. But on the other hand, though, it's not going to be very productive just to put your attention on one particular country. Well, this is an issue that requires all countries, all parties to come together and to work on a solution. And I think China made the announcement last year, and this year the president made it very clear. And he's asking all levels of government to not only lay out their blueprint, but also the action plan, also the specific plan for the projects. So this is I think this is something that we expect China to share with the world, what we're going to achieve and how we're going to achieve this, and what would be the roadmap for achieving these targets. The Consulate General just shared some points which I think are very, very important. For instance, the green finance, right? This is one issue 6 years ago when during the COP20 in Hangzhou here in China. Back then, the Chinese government and the British government worked very closely to make it a top agenda item to discuss and agree on many basic principles for green finance. And China is making this a major issue right now, and the UK and has also been making this a very, very major issue. This is not only financing for climate change, but also financing for the overall green development. This is another thing that I think the world can expect. China is cooperating with other governments and other parties to push for how we can allocate resources for achieving this goal, not only just for the wealthier countries, the developed countries, but also for all countries to make this possible. Right?
Okay, thank you, Professor Xi. Let me move on to with Richard and about the business sector, because we talk about collaboration, and the business sector is a very important player in that process. Richard, can you say a few words, or can you share with us the importance of COP26 actually to the business sector and in industry by and large? Because at BC, of course, we try to convince our members to pay attention to COP26. So what would you say to them?
Well, COP26 is coming at a very crucial time. And as Tamsin has pointed out, we have been meeting at conferences of the parties every year for 26 years, but only some of those events really make a difference. I personally attended COP21 in Paris when the Paris Agreement was signed. The reason I was there was because of the failure of the previous COP in Copenhagen. And to a large extent, it was the business community that had the finger pointed at it to say, reason governments couldn't sign that agreement was that they didn't believe their business communities were behind them. So at Paris, the entire business community globally was mobilized to be sending a very strong message. Now, it wasn't that the business community wasn't supportive of climate action. They very much were, but they were just silent. So that was corrected at Paris, and there was a very loud voice from the business community saying to governments, we are ready. You can sign this agreement, and we will be 100% behind you. Now, today, we're in a situation where we still have an agreement, but we haven't yet finalized the rule book. And this will be important as to how the Paris Agreement will be implemented. So 6 years on from Paris, we still have yet to have a very clear way of achieving climate change where we have consistency and a clear rule book. We've yet to unlock the financing that was promised, as Tamsin points out, the promise of financing from the developed world to the developing world has yet to be unlocked. And so there is another role, I think, for the business community to be sending a clear message to say, we need these rules. We need clear and consistent ways of implementing climate action, and it's time for action, not just setting targets and setting ambitions. Now, I think another reason why this particular COP is coming at a crucial time is that we are seeing a convergence. The policy ambitions that we're seeing all over the world and the tightening of those targets is really creating some momentum. Just in Asia, as we've seen from the video, so many nations have now set themselves targets to be carbon neutral or net zero by 2050. So that is becoming a strong momentum, which means that it will be translated into national policy. We're also seeing a convergence with technology developments. Now, I have worked in the energy industry, in the electricity industry in particular, all my career. And I have always looked at the technology that we need to decarbonize the electricity sector. And it has always been there. There's nothing that is new when it comes to renewable energy or nuclear power or offshore wind. These are very old technologies. But the cost of those technologies has been prohibitively expensive in the past. That has changed, and that has changed very rapidly to the point where we are now seeing renewable energy and zero carbon is actually cheaper than fossil fuel technology. So this has really tipped the balance. And we're also seeing a very strong change from the financial sector. When we start talking about green finance, we start talking about funding projects with sustainability, ESG in mind. This is creating a huge supply of finance that is now available. So when you put all of that together, you've got a business sector that is calling out for clarity around the rules. You've seen technology advances that is really positioning us to be able to decarbonize our electricity sector and make carbon-free electricity available to other sectors of the economy. We're seeing the finance there, and we're seeing the will of businesses to support this.
Well, thank you, Richard. I think your message is loud and clear. And I think in the recent years, the business sector has been very upfront in supporting climate action and actually going into different solutions and innovations to try to be part of that solution. So I think it is a great message. But now, Richard, you also mentioned negotiation because I think the business really want to see a clear implementation plan. Now, would you say, because a few participants actually asked, because number one, COP has been delayed for a year, and number two, we are now seeing a lot of conflicts between East and West. Would it affect the process of negotiations in the coming COP26? And that's to you and also maybe to Tamsin. Maybe Richard, you go first.
There's such this is such a crucial time for collaboration and not for competition and conflict. And I think we have seen some signs of hope that climate change is of such global importance that we can work together. From the business sector's point of view, it's so crucial for business and governments to be collaborating and working together. It's not right for business to sit back and think that we'll let governments take the lead and we'll follow, because as I've said, that just creates uncertainty for government. So business needs to be taking the front foot and taking leadership and really showing governments that this is the time that we can work together, and this is so important for us to work together.
Thank you, Richard. And Tamsin, what do you think?
Sorry. I So, I mean, I think it is a difficult time globally, and I think you know, geopolitically, we are in a competition of ideologies. We are in a competition of ideologies between democracies and authoritarian states, and that is a backdrop that is going to live with us for the next few decades. But that doesn't stop the capability to work together where we have shared interests. And I think, you know, Professor Thies talked about the cooperation that's happened between the UK and China. I used to be posted in Beijing 2007 to 2009. And back then, we were even then working with Chinese economists on how do we tackle climate change? How do we make this a reality? So even where you can have disagreements on ideology, you can also find areas where you have shared interests to work together. And I think we definitely see that in place. And I think it's actually incredibly important that it happens. So I remain pretty optimistic despite that backdrop. And I think the other thing I would say is actually the timing and the delay of COP is helpful from the perspective of having a new administration in the US. And I think that potentially makes it easier for us to reach the ambitious agreement that we want to seek.
Okay, thank you, Tamsin. Now, I want to ask you a second question. It's still about collaboration. We talk a lot about COP26 and how we can accelerate international and maybe also regional collaboration. What is the prospect of, you know, the British Consul General in Hong Kong working closer with the Hong Kong government moving forward? Because the Environment Secretary is about to announce a new climate action plan. And you know the momentum is there, and we are now leading to COP26, and maybe post COP26 there will be other opportunities. So, what's your thoughts? You know, how would you like to work closer with Hong Kong? Maybe not just the Hong Kong government, but as a start with the government, and then with the business sector, with academics and other important stakeholders.
Yes, thank you. And the Environment Secretary has actually just confirmed that he's going to attend COP26. So that's really great. So we'll see Hong Kong participation in the summit in Glasgow, which is great. So, I mean, we do speak to the Hong Kong government, and I spoke to the Environment Secretary and others in government about the Climate Action Plan. I think it's great that there's the commitment in place for 2050. I think it's now a question of what are the actions that the government is going to take to make that a reality. I think also what you do see in Hong Kong is in the business sector a real willingness to make this happen. And so lots of companies are taking real action on this. I think the other important role that Hong Kong has is as a global financial center. So as we sort of think about the future and our future competitiveness, I think one of the real competitive strengths that I think Hong Kong can play and is actually on climate finance. And I think taking action domestically sort of in Hong Kong is really, really important, but the scale of capital that sits within Hong Kong is massive. So if you can get the regulatory framework that allows you to make climate actions more possible, then you can make big changes. And I think the regulators here are doing a really good job of that. The head of the Securities and Futures Commission, for example, sits on IOSCO, which is a sort of standard setting body, which is looking at what are the kind of climate disclosures that you need to put in place to make this a reality. And I was at a business summit this morning, and one of the banks there was saying, well, look, in reality, we can't agree to a loan, or it's very difficult for us to agree to a loan, for example, a 25-year loan on a coal mine. Why? Because we're not confident enough that actually the policy framework will be permissive of that. And so when you see that action, now what are the drivers for that? That is it regulation? Is it looking at the policy environment? Is it also a belief that your employees and that your shareholders and others want to see this action? There's lots of really reinforcing actions that I think make it in a sort of encouraging environment. So I think we want to work together with Hong Kong as a fellow financial centre. I know sort of the Lord Mayor and others in the UK are very, very keen to do that, and we're looking for more opportunities to expand that cooperation. We have tried to, rather than just say it's terribly important that we take action on climate change, we've tried to lead by example. We know how tough it is because we're trying to do it ourselves. So I hope over this sort of next period, there'll be more opportunities for us to share our experience as well with Hong Kong government and others.
Okay, thank you, Tamsin. I would like to pose the same or similar question to Professor Chi. Now, what about collaboration between China and Hong Kong, in particular in the Greater Bay Area? I think we talk a lot about opportunities and potential, with the Greater Bay Area. And in this particular situation, addressing climate change, thinking about decarbonization, and given both Hong Kong and China already announced an ambitious target. So what are the opportunities there for joint action, Professor Chi?
Well, the Greater Bay Area is a very special region in China and also in the world. It's limited in size, but there are a lot of population, 70 million people living in this whole area, with the economy, the size exceeding Russia and Korea, and it's getting bigger. Then 2 years ago, the Chinese government, the State Council, released the outline plan for the Greater Bay Area development. And in that particular document, it defined expected Hong Kong to play a leading role in developing the region, the special administrative region, into a green finance hub, and also playing a key role in standard setting for green finance. If you're thinking about 70% of FDI, all FDI into China, is coming through Hong Kong, this is a very, very important. Green or not, that makes a huge difference for overall green development in China in general, and also in the Greater Bay Area in particular. So I think I would think that is a key area that Hong Kong and the mainland China can actually work together, and to really making Hong Kong a green finance center. It's very ironic. The Hong Kong, for a long time, was ranked among the top 3 of the global finance center. However, in terms of the green finance center, it has been lagging behind many of the Chinese cities on the mainland, and it ranked about number 40 worldwide. Very much, just not matching its status as a finance center internationally. I think that one major area. Another area is this idea that myself and some of my colleagues were working on, is to develop Hong Kong and Macau and Guangdong into a special regional, a unified regional carbon market. And we have a lot of problem in the negotiation Article 6. And I think this area, if we can successfully develop a regional carbon market, it will really help the international negotiation, and to show this kind of setting can actually work out. Let me just also mentioning the international cooperation. I think the 2 speakers have made it very, very clear. I really agree with both of them. I think this is a very, very difficult time and a very critical time for cooperation internationally, but it's very, very difficult. So far, it's so much easier to say and to show our willingness to work together, but it's very, very hard. We have seen this be a lot of conflicts and competition really dominating the issues like climate change, where we really need cooperation. I agree with Tamsin. I think ideology is important, but at the same time, if we think ideology is just a shared belief how we do things, how we think we can make things work, how we can actually solve problem, and if we agree on that, we also need to be open-minded, to be willing to adjust ourselves, and including our own beliefs. Right? The COVID-19 case has shown that greater role played by the government is really not always a bad thing, and in this case, it's actually critical to the success for so far. Right? On the other hand, this lesser role played by the government has led to disasters in many areas in the world. I think this same thing can be said about climate change and other environmental issues. So I do not really see is a competition of ideology between democracy and authoritarian. I think it is a competition of our shared belief, what works, what doesn't, and I think we need to be willing to make adjustment, because threats like this, these challenges like climate change and the pandemic, really the unprecedented, and we need to think hard and to really understand what we're willing to give up and what we need to uphold, for tackling these challenges. Right.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chi. Richard, Professor Chi talked about competition. Now he mentioned competition in terms of ideology, but if we take competition in a much more business sense, competing between different companies, what's our experience with companies in Hong Kong working with mainland companies or businesses in addressing climate change? Do you think there are enough, collaboration to move things forward, or are you worried about competition may take away some of the edge or opportunities? And how would that experience actually help Hong Kong, not just mainland China, but also Hong Kong, to decarbonize?
Well, it's a very important question, Simon, for us here in Hong Kong. If we think of ourselves as a city and we try and develop a plan to decarbonize within our city limits, it would be the same as London or Glasgow or New York or Paris trying to decarbonize without any access to the resources around them, which is impossible. So we need to think of ourselves as part of a regional entity. And the Greater Bay Area is big enough, 70 million people with huge GDP. That is big enough for us to really start to look at how we can make use of the resources around us. As I said earlier, we have all the technology and the know-how to decarbonize. What we don't have in Hong Kong is land. So some of the technologies that we need to think about are offshore technologies, such as offshore wind. Now that we have a certain amount of the sea around us in Hong Kong, but if we stretch that boundary a little bit, we could actually make better use of the scale. And so we can have better solutions if we think more regionally rather than just within the confines of Hong Kong. We have a perfect example of zero carbon energy. Actually, around a quarter of Hong Kong's energy is already supplied from a carbon-free source, which is the Dai Bay nuclear power station. Now, that's not located in Hong Kong. It's located 60 kilometers away within the Greater Bay Area. But these are where we can get better solutions if we think regionally. And for the business sector, businesses would love to be politically neutral. That is the ideal, because you can then work internationally and you can find partners around the world that aligned with your interests. And we have all the infrastructure with trade agreements, international standards, contracts, arbitration centers. All of that infrastructure is there. So in many respects, politics can get in the way of business. And if that's the case, then we end up with suboptimal solutions. So Hong Kong business has a long history of collaboration and cooperation within the Greater Bay Area and elsewhere in China. And I really see that is going to be crucial in finding the best solutions for Hong Kong.
Thank you, Richard. Now, I've got two questions actually also for Richard. Now, they asked about carbon-free electricity for everyone in Hong Kong and also CLP's decarbonization plan. Now, to be honest, I think it's not about the focus of this panel, but since that's been asked and you're on panel. So can you very briefly just tell us what's the plan from CLP to decarbonize? You mentioned offshore wind. Maybe that's a solution, is that correct?
Well, I think it's a very a very natural question, considering that 65% of carbon emissions in Hong Kong come from the electricity generation activities. That's simply because we don't have a lot of other big industry in Hong Kong. So electricity generation is our big industry. Another 18% of emissions come from the transport sector. So if you can decarbonize electricity and then use electric vehicles, then you've solved 83% of Hong Kong's carbon problems. That still leaves 17% to be solved, but clearly decarbonizing electricity and then making decarbonized electricity available to other sectors will be a huge part of the government's plan for decarbonization. So I've said that we have the technology. I've talked about offshore wind. However, that will still only be perhaps 10% of the solution. We already have 34% of our power, 34% of CLP's power, which represents 25% of Hong Kong's power coming from the Daya Bay nuclear power station. And again, another type of investment in nuclear power along the lines of Daya Bay would double that to around 50%. That still leaves us around 40%. Now, we have been making big investments in natural gas, which have a view towards replacement and repurposing with hydrogen in future. And hydrogen is essentially natural gas without the carbon in it. So it's carbon free. So with that combination of technologies, we have all the technology that we need and all the infrastructure that we need. And if we can coordinate this in a very sensible way that maintains reliability, ensures that our system is as resilient as possible, then we can decarbonize. And I believe that that can be done by 2050.
Okay. Well, thank you, Richard. Now, just one question came in from Edwin Lau, and he also talked about energy in Hong Kong, and he mentioned green hydrogen. He mentioned renewable energies. I would like to actually kind of switch this the focus of this question to make it relevant to this panel, and ask Tamsin actually, in COP26, will there be any conversations or discussions or breakout arrangement to talk about energy transition?
So I think there'll be a number of different discussions in the COP summit. I mean, and there is the main kind of negotiations between government parties, but there's also around it a big business engagement and a big civil society engagement. And so many of those conversations are about these things like, how do we get a meaningful energy transition? Some of that is about the government enabling mechanisms, but some of it is actually really about how do businesses operate. We're still putting together all of the details of the summit, and obviously it's a particularly unusual time, but our aim is to have hopefully most delegates will be able to come fully vaccinated. That will allow us to be able to operate a much more normal summit. We are flying out vaccines to countries which won't be able to allow their delegates to get vaccinated through their national programs, which will make it easier for us to have a sort of more normal summit, and so that sort of broader business engagement will be possible.
Are there opportunities for, say, the audience from Hong Kong to join online? Because maybe they can't afford, or maybe they don't want to travel, but they are still very much part of that conversation, just like some of the green groups here in Hong Kong. So what would be your advice to them if they want to take part or participate in COP26?
Well, I don't yet know the details of whether there will be public events that Hong Kong individuals can dial into, but when I do, I can of course share that. The other thing I should mention is that the Italians, who are our partners running COP26, have focused their efforts very much on youth engagement and focusing about how do we create those kind of dialogues with youth, because ultimately they are the individuals who are going to live past 2050. They are going to be the people who, if we fail, are going to live it. So it's really, really important that we have that nature of engagement, and they are in the process of starting to release information on that. So I think it's sort of watch this space.
Oh, thank you. Because actually you answered the question from Cameron Rowe asking about youth participation and how youth in Hong Kong can contribute. So basically they just, stay focused and, they will have an opportunity to join.
Yes, I think so. For the actual COP, watch this space. But I think, in general, I think there's a huge role for youth through so many different ways to raise their voice. So whether that's with their employers, for example, saying, I want to work for a company that has a net zero commitment. I want this to be a reality, and put that pressure on. If you're at university, you want to talk about it. How are we going to make this happen? How are we going to get the technology? If you're a science person, how do we get the science to work? If you're a public policy person, how do we get the governments to take real action? Really making this an issue. So I find one of the issues here in Hong Kong is just that the government is very distracted. There's a lot else going on. And so when I raise climate change in senior government meetings, I don't always have the headspace to tackle this, and actually it's just incredibly important. And I think it is getting easier, but I think it's really important for people to be making that case, to say, this matters to me, I want to see action.
Thank you, Tamsin. I've saved a very interesting question for Professor Chi. Professor Chi, this is from Robert Gibson. Looking forward, so we're not talking about next year, but in the near future. Now, China is hosting the COP on biodiversity this year. I think it's in October in Kunming. It's never hosted a climate COP. So what will be the chance for China in the future to host a COP meeting? What's your thought?
That is a very interesting question. I'm very glad that COP15 for biodiversity is being held in Kunming, and it has been making news with all this, the crowd of herd of elephant coming into Kunming and lately, and I think it's time for China to seriously consider hosting another a COP. I certainly hope so. I do not know the answer, but I think I would expect before too long, and China would be willing to work with other parties to host this this event. It's a very important event. 15 some years ago, I did some research work and wrote policy recommendations for calling for proactive climate policies. I think over the past 15 years, especially in the past 5 years, I've seen the Chinese government and in fact, the whole society are now so much more proactive than before. And especially with this new announcement about carbon neutrality. And China now, the overall attitude toward the issue has been very, very different. I would say the time is good, and it's quite mature right now. And I certainly hope to see the COP20, maybe not 27, 28, 29 very soon. They're coming to Beijing or other cities in China. Right.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chi. Now, I think we are coming to the last question. It's about emission trading. Now, how the Paris rulebook, well, actually, what's the current state regarding the rulebook? Because I know in the last COP meeting, we had some expectation. What about this upcoming COP26 meeting, Tamsin, if you may? Thank you.
So I don't know the latest state of the negotiation and exactly where they've got to, but I mean, I think the broad objective is to get the Paris rule back in place. So how do we actually get this to be a reality, and how do you actually get all these rules in place, and rules that all the major emitters can agree with and can make happen? And I think that's just a big chunk of what the negotiations are about. I think there may be other experts who know more in detail about this, but yeah, I mean, indeed, this is the goal, is to get this Paris rule book in place.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chi. What's your thought? Are you looking forward to the discussion about the rule book, emission trading? Because I mean, China, I think this month later will roll out another phase of their plan about emission trading.
You're absolutely right, Simon. Right now, the focus here in China is to actually starting trading by the end of this month. And this when this is started, we're about to see the world's largest carbon market. So this covers only one sector right now, to start with, which is the power, and 40% of the emissions. We're talking about 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide, covering that much carbon dioxide trading. Over time, the Chinese rule book will to expand and cover 8 different sectors, and there are also discussion about carbon taxation. At the same time, I think the international conversation, negotiations, in fact, on the rule book is also very, very important. But I think there is no reason to rush into a conclusion right now, because I think if all major countries, major economies begin to cover a significant portion of carbon emissions, it will be really, really good to prepare for international carbon market. For instance, I would be more interested in seeing an effective carbon market here in China, and also starting a nationwide carbon market in the United States. You know, with the European, the EU ETS is making more and more sense nowadays. I think the other economies should follow suit and making their own carbon market work.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chi. Richard, last word about emission trading. Do you agree with Professor Chi? We shouldn't rush.
Well, I've been following emissions trading markets for a long time now, and we've been working for around 40 years to try and develop an effective emissions trading market. And the fact that we don't have one yet is just, I think, an indication of the complexity of this. So I think with COP26, there are some very important objectives in tightening up on the national contributions, getting a rule book in place on the implementation. Those are really important. And if we could make progress on emissions trading, there may be some other avenues that we can use. There are some initiatives from the business sector looking at voluntary carbon markets, for example, that can help cut through some of the complexity and perhaps simplify it. I think for the power sector, you know, while we have been waiting for an emissions trading scheme, the cost of renewable energy has fallen exponentially. So we are now at the point where actually it's just a matter of getting on with it. We've got everything we need. We just need to scale up and get on with it. But there will be that section of the economy that will rely on some emissions trading scheme, these harder to abate areas. So it is still important, but it perhaps isn't as important as the main priorities for COP26.
Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you, everyone on this panel. I think I would like to close this panel. I think we've set the scene very nicely for our next session with Christine being the moderator. Now, please give it up to all our panelists, Tamsin, Richard, and of course, from Beijing, Professor Chi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the next session will start at 3:45 sharp. So please come back in, I think, 5 minutes. See you there. Bye-bye.